There's a silence that speaks louder than any scream. And when you walk away without a word, that silence becomes a storm in his chest. See, some people think pain is only felt in arguments, in loud voices, in slamming doors. But real pain, it's in the stillness. It's in that space where you don't even look back. He laughed when you cried. He ignored your worth. He counted your love as a guarantee. But when you left, no goodbyes, no warnings, no begging for his attention anymore, that's when he heard you the loudest. You didn't throw plates, you didn't shout, you just stopped showing up. And that hit deeper than anything you could have said. Because here's the truth. He never believed you'd go. He thought you'd stay and suffer, stay and hope. But the day you walked away in silence, he felt it in every part of his soul. He started replaying every moment, every ignored call, every time he rolled his eyes while you tried, and now all he has is echoes of the love he lost. So when you walk away without a word, without a tear, without a trace, that's when he feels it. There's something about silence that we don't always understand, something we overlook. Most folks think noise is the proof of passion, that if you're yelling, screaming, crying, begging, that's when you care. That's when you're hurting. That's when love is on the line. But what they don't realize is real pain doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it creeps in like a shadow, quiet, heavy. And when it speaks, it doesn't need a microphone. It just is. Silence becomes the scream you never thought you'd hear. Because when you stop explaining yourself, stop arguing, stop defending, that's when the message hits hardest. That's when it cuts deep. See, when you stop talking, people start listening. Funny, ain't it? You could have poured your heart out 1,000 times. You could have explained, pleaded, written letters, cried in front of him, told him how much it hurt to be invisible. But he didn't hear you. He tuned it out. Dismissed it like background noise, thought it was just another emotional episode. He never leaned in, never listened with the intention to change. But the moment you stopped showing up with your voice, the moment your presence became absence, your sound became silence, that was the moment he finally turned his head. Silence forces a man to sit with himself. See, words give him something to push against. He can argue, defend, distract. He can twist your sentences, deny your pain, walk away mid-conversation. But silence gives him nothing. Nothing to fight, nothing to escape from. Just a room full of echoes, and every one of them sounds like the truth he ran from. That's when it hits. Not in your tears, but in your quiet. Not when you raise your voice, but when you leave the room and never look back. There's a certain kind of power in not explaining yourself anymore, in walking away not out of spite but out of peace. You've given all the chances, you've laid it all out, you tried, God knows you tried. But at some point your silence becomes your declaration. It says, I'm done. Not bitter, not broken, just done. And when a woman gets quiet, when she's no longer trying to make him understand, when she closes that chapter without needing his permission, he feels that. That kind of silence doesn't fade, it lingers. Because now he has to live with the absence of your voice. The way you used to ask about his day, the way you used to say good night, even when you were mad, the way your love used to fill the silence with laughter, stories, dreams. Now the silence in his life is just empty, not peaceful, not still, empty. Because your voice was the warmth in the room, and now that it's gone, that coldness wraps around him, and he starts to realize he's not missing the noise, he's missing you. You see, people don't miss the arguments, they don't miss the debates, they miss the presence. They miss the way your love made them feel, even when they didn't deserve it. And when that love goes quiet, when it stops asking, stops forgiving, stops checking in, that's when they realize they've lost something they may never get back. And no matter how loud the world gets around them, nothing drowns out the sound of someone who's no longer speaking to you. So yes, silence is louder than words. It's more than an absence of sound. It's a presence of truth. It's a mirror. It reflects everything someone refused to see. It forces the other person to hear all the things you stopped saying. And the thing is, they do hear it. Not right away, maybe, but eventually. In the quiet moments, in the lonely nights, in the in-between hours when the world slows down, they hear it. And when they do, it's deafening. Power ain't always loud. It doesn't always come with fireworks and final speeches. Sometimes real power, it's in the walk. It's in the moment you decide, without a single word, that you're done trying to teach someone how to treat you. No dramatics, no announcement, just a shift in your spirit, a quiet closing of the door. That kind of exit, that's the kind of power people feel in their bones. Because it shows you don't need a scene, you just needed peace. See, walking away without a word, that's not weakness, that's not cowardice, that's clarity. It means you've said all you could say. It means the lessons were given, the patience was tested, the grace was extended, and now you're choosing yourself, and you ain't doing it to hurt him. You're doing it because staying would mean betraying yourself. That silence at the end, that's the sound of self-respect rising to the surface. People expect a warning, they expect a fight, because that's what they're used to. They're used to the back and forth, the cycle, the drama. So when you don't give them that, when you just leave quietly, fully, and without looking back, they don't know how to handle it. They feel it in a different way, deeper, slower, like a bruise they didn't notice until the pain set in. And by the time they do, you're already gone. There's something haunting about someone who walks away in silence, because it means they don't owe you anything anymore. No closure, no explanation, no last text, no what if. It means the love they had for you, it died long before their feet stepped out that door. They were already gone in their heart. And when that happens, there's no undoing it. You don't come back from that kind of leaving. You might think silence leaves room for a return, but not this kind. This silence is final. It's not a pause. It's not a test. It's a full stop. It says, I gave you every chance to get it right. I loved you in all the ways you didn't even know how to receive. And now, I'm not asking you to change. I'm removing myself so I can breathe. That kind of departure, that's out of liberation. And the wild thing is, the moment you walk away without saying a word, that's when the words start coming. From him. The apologies, the realizations, the I didn't know you were serious, but by then, it's too late. Because silence was your answer. It was the answer he didn't hear when you were crying. It was the goodbye you gave when you were still showing up every day, hoping he'd finally see you. So never underestimate the power of walking away without a word. It's not about punishing him. It's about saving you. It's about honoring the love you gave and not letting it be trampled one more time. It's a quiet revolution. And the ones who witness it, they never forget it. Because silence, paired with a strong back and steady steps, that's unforgettable. You know what's wild? People think love is unlimited. They treat it like it'll always be there, like you'll always be there. They get comfortable in the way you show up, in the way you forgive, in the way you love past the flaws. And after a while, they stop seeing it. They stop appreciating it, that warmth, that patience, that presence. It becomes background noise. They stop saying thank you. They stop saying I'm lucky. Because somewhere along the way, they started believing you would never leave. And you, being the heart you are, you kept giving. Even when it hurt, even when your needs were pushed aside, you made excuses. You said, he's just going through something. You gave him time. You gave him space. You gave him love. in moments where he gave you silence. And the whole time, he thought he had forever. He thought your heart was on layaway, that no matter how long he delayed, you'd still be there waiting, still loving him, still choosing him. But love is not something you borrow without repayment. Love is not an unlimited favor. You see, people take for granted what they think they'll never lose. They treat your love like furniture, something that's just part of the room, until one day it's gone, you're gone, and now the room feels cold. Now he's looking around, wondering what's missing, and that's when it hits. It was you, your energy, your kindness, your effort. All the things he got used to, like air, are gone. And the thing about love is, it don't always walk out loud. Sometimes it slips away quietly while he's busy ignoring your texts, forgetting your birthday, brushing off your tears. Your love is packing its bags inside your chest. It's folding up all the little moments. It's closing chapters he didn't even know were ending. So by the time he realizes what's missing, you're already emotionally 10 miles down the road. And baby, there's no GPS for that kind of distance. It's only after the fact that they start to remember the details, the way you used to hold space for them, the way you encouraged their dreams, the way you stayed up when they needed to talk, even when they didn't deserve it. Now, every little thing becomes a reminder. That old hoodie you wore, that spot on the couch, that favorite song. The absence becomes a presence in its own right, loud, haunting, unforgiving. And he'll try to reach for the past like it's still within arm's length. He'll think maybe one grand gesture, one apology, will bring back what he lost. But what he doesn't understand is, he didn't just lose you. He lost the version of you that still believed in him. He lost the version that gave second chances, that poured love into empty spaces, that stood beside him even when she was standing alone. And once that version is gone, she don't come back. That kind of love, once it dries up, don't flow the same way twice. So yeah, people take love for granted. They mistake consistency for permanence. They think patience means permission, but love, real, it's a gift. And once you forget how rare it is, once you mishandle it long enough, don't be surprised when it disappears. Not with a bang, not with a scream. Just one day, you wake up and it's gone. And all that's left is the echo of what you didn't appreciate. People got it twisted. They think if you ain't yelling, you ain't serious. If you ain't loud, you ain't hurt. But let me tell you something. Real pain doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it just stares. And in that stillness, in that quiet, that's where the real message lives. Because when a person stops raising their voice and starts lowering their energy, that's when they're saying the most. Silence isn't weakness, it's focus. It's restraint. It's the sound of someone who's done trying to make noise for someone who refuses to listen. You don't have to raise your voice to raise the truth. You don't have to shout to prove your pain is valid. That's what he never understood. He thought your calm meant you were okay. He thought your silence meant surrender. But really, it meant you were seeing things clearly for the first time. See, when you stop trying to convince somebody to care and you start caring for yourself instead, your peace becomes the loudest protest you will ever make. You stop performing. You stop proving. You just be. And being quiet, that ain't passive. That's power. Because anybody can scream. Anybody can throw words around when emotions are high. But to sit there, calm, unshaken, clear-eyed, and say nothing, that takes strength. That says, I've said everything I needed to say. Now I'm watching what you do. That's when the tables turn. That's when your silence starts speaking louder than your voice ever could. Because now you're not arguing, you're observing. And he's finally realizing you ain't mad, you're just done. There's a moment in every relationship where the energy shifts. where the tears dry, where the begging stops. And if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it. You'll think, she's quiet, that means she's cooled off. No, that silence, that's the beginning of her exit. That's when she's emotionally stepping back, pulling herself out of the chaos, choosing herself in the middle of the storm. And the wild part is, you won't even notice the silence until it's permanent. He never listened when you raised your voice. He brushed it off, made jokes, rolled his eyes, walked away. So now he has to listen to the quiet. He has to sit in the aftermath. No more debates, no more long texts, just space, just stillness, just the empty room where your presence used to be. And in that space, he starts to feel it, not the sound of your words, but the weight of your absence. And the hardest part for him, he knows you left after you stopped yelling. That means it wasn't anger. It was clarity. Because anger wants to be heard. But peace don't need an audience. Peace just moves. And when you finally found your peace, you didn't announce it. You didn't scream, "I'm done." You just stopped reacting. You stopped responding. You stopped pouring into someone who left you emotionally dry. That's how he knew it was real. Not because you said it, but because you stopped trying to prove it. So no, you don't have to yell to be heard. You don't have to beg to be seen. You don't have to fight to be valued. Your quiet departure, your unbothered presence, your stillness in the face of disrespect, that is your voice. And if he doesn't hear it now, he'll hear it later, in the silence of his own regret, in the echo of everything you didn't say. Sometimes people can't see you until you're gone. They can't feel the weight of your presence until they're standing in the emptiness you left behind. See, when you were there, loving hard, giving freely, showing up with everything you had, they didn't pause to notice. They didn't slow down long enough to reflect. You were always there, so they thought you always would be. But absence has a way of pulling the mirror out, and suddenly they're faced with everything they chose not to see. Reflection don't happen in the noise. It don't happen when they're comfortable. It happens in the quiet. It happens when the person who used to hold them down, carry the weight, and bring the light is no longer picking up the phone. When that good morning text don't come. When the usual check-ins go silent. That's when they start thinking. That's when their memory starts rewinding the reel, not because they want to, but because they have to. The silence forces them inward. When you were around, they didn't have to reflect. You did all the emotional labor for both of you. You explained the problems. You voiced the pain. You kept the connection alive. But now the silence makes them do the work. Now they're left with only themselves. And that's when it gets real. That's when they hear the things they ignored. That's when they start asking the questions you asked 100 times. Except now, it's just their own voice echoing back. They remember the moments they dismissed. The times they rolled their eyes when you were vulnerable. The nights you stayed up worried while they slept peacefully like nothing was wrong. And now that you're not around to forgive it, to soften it, to keep it moving, it all sits heavy. The "I love you" they didn't say back. The effort they didn't match. The coldness they called normal. All of it replays like a movie. But now, there's no pause button, no rewind, just regret. And see, that's the twist. You didn't leave to teach a lesson. You left because you had to save yourself. But in your leaving, they finally had to sit with the consequences. Emotional reflection is born in discomfort. It don't come from second chances. It comes from final ones. And while they're left staring at the door you walked through, they finally start to realize you were the peace they kept disturbing. You were the love they couldn't hold because they never learned how to handle something that pure. Now, every day without you becomes a lesson they teach themselves. They start understanding your silence, not because you explained it, but because they finally feel it. They begin to comprehend the boundaries you beg them to respect. They start to crave the comfort they once overlooked. And it's painful because they're learning through loss. They're growing through your absence. You became their wake-up call, not through confrontation, but through distance. So yes, emotional reflection begins in your absence. Your departure becomes the moment they begin to see, to feel, to understand. And the irony? They couldn't hear your pain when you were speaking, but now they can't stop hearing your silence. It echoes through their days. It whispers through their nights. And that reflection, that's on them, because you already did your part. You already loved. You already tried. Now it's their turn to face the truth. Alone. There comes a moment when you just stop reacting. Alone. There comes a moment when you just stop reacting, not because you don't care, but because you care differently now. You start realizing that every time you respond to chaos, to disrespect, to manipulation, you're feeding it. You're keeping it alive. So you go quiet, not because you've got nothing to say, but because saying it would cost your peace. And finally, your peace is worth more than proving your point. That silence, that stillness, that's not defeat. That's the beginning of healing. Healing doesn't always start with therapy. Sometimes it starts with restraint, with biting your tongue when you could have clapped back, with choosing peace over performance. You used to pour energy into defending yourself, explaining your worth, asking to be seen. But now you know better. Now you don't react because you've outgrown the need to be understood by someone who was committed to misunderstanding you. That shift, that's sacred. That's where your healing begins. At first, they'll mistake it for weakness. Why aren't you saying anything? You just going to let it go like that? But what they don't know is that letting go is exactly what you're doing. And not just of the moment, but of them, of the pattern, of the cycle. You don't need to argue anymore because you no longer need validation from a place that constantly denied it. And when you reach that space, woof, that's when you know something inside you has changed forever. You see, the absence of reaction is not numbness, it's awareness. It's you finally seeing things for what they are, not what you hope they'd be. You're no longer reacting to the person in front of you because now you're focused on the person within you. And that person, they need rest, they need gentleness, they need protection. You've been in survival mode for so long you forgot what it felt like to be unbothered. But now that healing version of you is showing up, and they're quiet for a reason. And in that quiet, things start to come back. Your clarity, your joy, your self-respect. Because all that energy you were spending reacting to nonsense, you're pouring it back into yourself now. You're not raising your voice anymore. You're raising your standards. You're not explaining your worth. You're embodying it. You don't have to prove anything to anybody. Your silence says it all. I've healed too much to bleed for this again. Let them talk. Let them twist it. Let them assume whatever they want. That part's no longer your business. The old you would have jumped to correct them. The old you would have pleaded to be seen. But the healed you, the healing you just smile, you breathe, you release. Because the moment you stop reacting, you stop giving them access to your soul. And that boundary, that's not cruelty, that's wisdom, that's protection, that's growth. So yes, the absence of reaction is the beginning of healing. It's not silence out of fear, it's silence rooted in strength. It's knowing you don't need to fight for peace, you just need to choose it. Every time you decide not to respond to the drama, the disrespect, the disregard, you're reclaiming yourself. You're writing a new story, one where your healing matters more than their opinion. And baby, that's the story worth telling. At some point, you just stop begging to be chosen. Not because you've stopped loving, but because you've started loving yourself more. You stop sitting in rooms where your presence is questioned. You stop knocking on doors that only open halfway. You stop lowering your voice, your power, your standards, just to be enough. For someone who can't even see your value. Begging? That's beneath you now. Because real love doesn't need convincing. Real love chooses you freely, and anything less than that, it ain't love. It's survival dressed up as affection. You spent so long twisting yourself into someone else's bending, shrinking, editing, hoping that maybe, just maybe, this time they'd wake up and see you. And it's not that you weren't enough. It's that they didn't have the depth to recognize what they were holding. You were gold. They had dust in their eyes. And you begged anyway. Because when your heart is pure, sometimes you'll keep showing up for someone who stopped showing up for you a long time ago. But that kind of love breaks you if you stay in it too long. You begged with your time, with your patience, with your forgiveness. You kept handing out second chances like candy, even when they didn't bother to say thank you for the first. You begged by staying silent when you should have spoken. You begged by trying harder when they got lazy. You begged every time you gave them access to a heart they didn't know how to hold. And what did it cost you? Pieces of yourself. Until one day, you woke up empty. And that's when the truth hit. You were starving, trying to feed someone else. Peace don't live in that space. Peace doesn't exist where you're constantly questioning your worth. Peace comes when you walk away from the table where love is conditional. When you stop performing for affection, when you stop apologizing for expecting the bare minimum. Peace is what shows up when you finally say, I don't have to earn what should be given freely. And baby, once you taste that kind of peace, that desperate version of you, the one who begged to be seen, she never comes back. And that's when your healing begins. The moment you stop chasing people who can't even keep up with your heart, the moment you realize that someone who truly wants you, someone who sees you, won't need reminders, won't need pressure, won't need a wake-up call. They'll show up on their own, they'll love you without instruction, and more importantly, they'll love you without you having to lose yourself in the process. That's the shift, that's the peace, and it feels like freedom. Now, when someone doesn't choose you, you don't fall apart. You let them go. You don't chase. You don't convince. You don't hand them a flashlight and beg them to find your light, because you know what you carry now. You know the love you bring. And if someone can't see that, that's their loss. You're done trying to prove what's already in your presence. You're done begging for what's supposed to flow naturally. And that, right there, that's peace. That's power. That's self-respect talking. So yes, peace comes when you stop begging to be chosen. When you realize that your love is not up for debate. When you know in your soul that being chosen should never require you to sacrifice yourself. The ones who truly see you, they won't hesitate. They won't make you beg. They'll stand beside you without question. And until that person comes, you'll keep choosing yourself, loudly, quietly, daily, because you no longer chase, you attract. You no longer beg, you believe. And that belief, that's where peace begins. There comes a moment in every journey where your silence says more than any explanation ever could. You used to explain yourself like your life depended on it. Every decision, every emotion, every reaction. You gave a breakdown like you were on trial, just trying to be understood, just trying to be seen clearly. But the truth is, some people don't want to understand you. They just want to argue. They want to twist your truth, poke holes in your peace, pull you back into their chaos. And when you finally realize that, you stop explaining and you start protecting. You see, explanation is for the willing, for the ones who care enough to listen with love. But when you're dealing with someone who's already made up their mind about who you are, Your words become weapons they use against you. They don't listen to learn. They listen to reply, to defend, to manipulate. And when you've been in that space too long, it drains you. So the shift begins when you finally look around and say, I'm done trying to make you get it, not out of anger, out of peace. Silence isn't weakness, it's mastery. It means you finally stopped pouring into conversations that only leave you feeling empty. It means you've reached a level of emotional maturity where you realize not everything requires a response. Not everyone deserves your inner thoughts. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Because when you're constantly explaining yourself, what you're really doing is begging for understanding. And baby, understanding should be a gift, not a demand. You used to type out long messages thinking if you just said it right, they'd finally see your side. You'd replay moments in your head, trying to figure out how to justify your boundaries, your distance, your healing. But the ones who love you, they don't need a thesis. They feel you. They see the shift and respect it. It's only the ones who took your access for granted that start asking questions when your silence shows up. Because silence exposes everything their comfort helped them ignore. And that's the real shift. When you stop trying to control the narrative and just let your actions speak. You stop trying to convince anyone of your worth. You stop trying to fix what you didn't break. You stop debating people who benefit from misunderstanding you. Instead, you choose peace. You choose to protect your energy, your healing, your growth. And it ain't always easy. No. Sometimes you want to say something, but healing teaches you that peace is worth more than being right. They'll feel it. Trust that. They'll feel the absence of your voice in places where they used to rely on your reaction. They'll feel the quiet like a cold breeze because they got so used to your emotional availability, the way you showed up, even when it cost you. So when you stop explaining, when you go quiet, that silence becomes a mirror. It shows them the weight of your absence and the reality that they never listened when you were loud. So yes, the real shift happens when you choose silence over explanation. Not because you're passive, but because you're done. Done begging to be understood. Done arguing with people who never cared to listen. Done giving away your peace for the sake of closure. Silence isn't the absence of power, it's the arrival of it. It's the point where you say, I don't owe you a version of myself that keeps you comfortable. And that kind of silence, that kind is the loudest thing you'll ever speak. So, here's the truth. You've been fighting a battle. Not with the world, not with anyone else, but with yourself. You've been struggling to figure out how to make others see you, how to make them hear you, how to make them feel what you feel. But the real victory comes not from them choosing you, but from you choosing yourself. From realizing that you don't need to beg for respect, for love, for understanding. Because the most important thing you'll ever do is decide that you're worthy of peace, worthy of space, worthy of love that doesn't come with strings attached. When you walk away from a situation that drains you, when you stop explaining yourself to people who've already made their minds up, when you let go of the need to fix things that were never yours to fix in the first place, that's when you find yourself. That's when you begin to heal. That's when you realize that silence isn't the absence of something. It's the presence of everything you've been holding inside. And now, you don't need to yell, you don't need to beg, you don't need to chase after anyone who doesn't see your worth. You stand firm in who you are and you walk away with your head held high. Your peace is yours. Your love is yours. And the truth is, you'll be just fine, better than fine. Because when you stop running, when you stop giving pieces of yourself to people who won't cherish them, that's when you'll find real freedom. And baby, that freedom, that's the beginning of everything. So keep your silence, keep your peace, keep walking away from what no longer serves you, and don't ever let anyone make you feel like you're not enough. because you are, and that's the truth.